Hello, everybody, and welcome to Called Up the Prospects podcast. I'm Chris Peters of FloHockey. He is Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects. And Cam, this is our 30th episode, and it is our post-draft episode. It's our last one for a little while. Let's have some fun today. How about it?
I mean, absolutely. Did I forget we were recording this morning and thought we were recording tomorrow? Absolutely, yes. Did I race together and make it within a nice window? Also, yes. So I'm feeling well refreshed, not at all frazzled, ready to go for number 30.
Yeah, which is great because now you're fired up. You're running on pure adrenaline at this point, and I think that's the way. I'm in the exact opposite way right now, where I'm just kind of like, I need to fire it up. So I'm going to be feeding off of your energy as we get this show going. But you know what else fires me up though, Cam, is that
Tell me about
first
it.
of all, thanks to everybody that listened. Our pre-draft episode was definitely our one of our most listened to episodes ever. But what I also draft and hearing from so many people that have found the podcast and really enjoy it. I know, like if I was on an elevator, if I was, at the draft floor, I didn't have anybody throw anything at me, which was nice. Aside from maybe some mean tweets that those did come in, but thank you for those as well. We appreciate you listening. But I mean, like, it's cool. It's really cool to hear that the podcast is resonating with people. I know people are enjoying kind of our rapport as well, which is great. But I mean, it does feel good. And Cam, I think, it's been a lot of fun to do it. And we got through our first draft season relatively unscathed. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about some of the things that came up over the course of the draft. But I mean, it's been exciting to see. I'm sure that you heard a lot of the same things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, just people coming up to us, whether it's in the media or on the team side, and giving us text, being like, "Oh, I like this episode," or someone was like, "Hey, I just hopped off the plane. I was listening to your show." Or I had one guy show up and look for a picture with me while he had a bag of pistachios. So he's got the pistachios in there on one shot right outside of the Peacock Theater. So no, it's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun this year. And yeah, just thankful for everybody that's kind of been joining us on this journey, and hopefully more to come.
Yeah, and certainly come back because we are going to take a break. We do need to get some rest. We're going to have a couple of weeks off here, and then we're going to ramp it back up as we get ready for 2026. Obviously, things like Kalinka Gretzky, World Junior Summer Showcase. There'll be things to talk about over the course of the summer. But today we're going to focus largely on recapping the draft. It's our first time that we've gotten together since the picks were there. We've had a chance to digest. We've had a chance to look at different things that happened, and we'll have a few things to talk about. We're also going to look ahead to 2026 because it is an exciting year. There's going to be big news on the 2026 front in the near future. We're going to talk Gavin McKenna and the decision, which we have talked about on this show before. But I mean, there's just so much great stuff to get to, Cam. And before we do get into it, just want to remind you guys, subscribe to this podcast on your audio app of choice. Also, catch us on YouTube, catch us on the Flow Sports app, catch us on social media for clips and other things. And obviously, you can follow the both of us at hockey_Robinson for Cam, at Chris M. Peters for me on X and elsewhere. So, yeah, I mean, I think that basically, if you haven't come aboard yet, hopefully this podcast will give you some new information that you can hold on to for a few weeks while we get our beauty rest and maybe take a very brief vacation. I just looked at, I already booked my travel for the World Junior Summer Showcase. I'm like, what? This is in 3 weeks. How is this possible? But this is what we do now. This is the season never ends, and off seasons are for sports like football. And even that's not that much of an off season. But anyway, all right, I digress. Cam, let's talk 2025 NHL Draft, if you don't mind.
Let's do it.
Let's start here. Can we never do this decentralized draft ever again? Can it just, we don't have to go too far into it because I think it's been beating a dead horse, but I just want to beat it. That sucked.
It sucked. I mean, I feel for Steve Mayer because, he did everything he could to set that up. Like we had, the internet worked. Hey, the internet worked. We were steps away from the players to go get interviews from them in the scrums, right? There was food The next day, I was missing some protein source for that breakfast, though. Not, pastries ain't going to get it done for me. Okay, so maybe a little more protein next time, Steve. But generally, they did what they could to put on a show in difficult circumstances. Now, I wonder if there was anyone who was more happy with how it turned out than Gary Bettman, right? Who has like long been like, y'all wanted this, I told you, and this is what happened. So he's probably like, I told you, I told you. So I think that, yes, we can never do that again. It would be very difficult for them to run it back like that with a straight face after everything that happened. But at the same time, I asked him in that press conference, I said, what's the mechanism in place? And he said it has to be overwhelmingly in favor of going back. And so we know that the last time it was a 26-6 vote in favor of decentralizing. So I don't know, does it have to be 26? Does it need to be 20-12? What's overwhelmingly in favor of it? And so I've I started hammering some GMs and some teams and been like, how's the experience for you? Do you want to go back? And like some of them, they didn't even know they were going to get a vote this summer. And one of them even said that to me, I hope they give us another chance to vote for this to go back. But a couple of them are a little wishy-washy where they're like, it was really nice to be able to talk amongst ourselves, the freedom to interact there and to make our picks. But, they also admitted that like the loss of the social factor, and not just the scouts going out for pops afterwards in Nashville, but like the social factor of the GM being able to walk across, 10 feet and talk to someone, is that, they thought maybe being decentralized was going to open up trade potential because there would be that free line. It seemed like it gummed it up, if anything. So if by any chance they do vote to keep this in, and I'm sure will not be alone in this, will be a very vocal critic against. So I truly do hope that we can never do it again.
Yeah, and you know what the other thing about it is, Cam, that's the part that I felt like there was some robbery to the players of the experience, not being able to have that. Like the other thing too, I don't think it showed up on TV as well as we could see from where we were in the media risers. That place was empty. And there was no like the buzz of a draft. The only time that we kind of had that moment was when Matthew Schaefer got picked number 1 and he saw the ribbon on his jersey and he broke down. And I think all of us just kind of at one moment went, oh, like, like kind of just like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful moment. But also you're feeling for the kid in that moment too. And that was part of it. And yes, I agree. Like Steve Mayer, like what he made the absolute most out of that. He made some chicken salad there out of the situation. And I really do think that you got to give him credit because it looked pretty good, but there was just
visually,
it dragged it, the technical difficulties, the different things. And then, the other thing, and the last point I'll make on this too is, to the GMs and the scouts and everybody and whoever said it was, that's awesome. It's not about you. I know it is, but it's not. It's about the fans. It's about the players. And the fact of the matter was, this was not good for the fans. This was not good for the media, who nobody cares about. But really, if you want better draft information, then yes, you would want that there. And then on top of it, you've also got, just this lack of buzz. And day 2 was completely devalued in this whole process as well. Day 2 can actually be a really fun day and a lot of players go to day 2.
Yeah.
And this year, nope. So, that was, I did not go into the theater. I was like, what am I going to see? I'm going to stay here so I can focus and actually do the job. And thankfully I had a team there that was getting interviews with players. By the way, check those out on our YouTube page. We've got like 50 prospect interviews on there. But it's really, at the end, it is about the fans. And we've taken one of the very best events on the NHL calendar and have cast it aside and said, we're not going to, like logistics. I get it. Tough shit. That's basically it. That's what I say about it.
One last beat for me, and then we'll let the horse rest. Is that, it's about the players, it's about the fans, but it's also about the league. And we said this, is that it was the one thing that the NHL had over the other big sports is the draft experience. And I still like, I understand that it's like, it's not in the CBA. It's like the teams are the ones making these selections. And, Bettman and they basically said like, oh, well, if you guys don't want to do this, we won't do this. I don't even think he should have said that. I should have been like, no, this is what's best for the league. This is what draws the most attention, the most fans in the building, the most excitement. This is how it is. And if you really don't want it butted up against development camp and free agency, well, then let's talk about starting the year sooner. Let's talk about reducing the preseason or reducing the schedule instead of extending the schedule to 84 games, which we'll be doing. Is let's find ways to get it so the draft is June 15th instead of June 28th. And then when we all get trapped in Nashville, when there's an airplane strike and we can't get out of Vegas, well, you got 2 weeks until free agency, and it's not the end of the world, because that was like the major thing. I know that lots of managers said like, oh, we don't like the cameras on us when we're trying to make our decision, or like the table right next door being able to hear us. It's like, well, it's been working for whatever 50 years. I'm sure you'll be fine for now. But it's like, yes, I get it. When you're literally cannot get back to your home city to do free agency, that's an issue. But
yeah,
I think you're right. Tough titties.
Yeah.
You got to just make do with how it is, because that's what's best for the game.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. So, all right. Well, we beat that dead horse again, but it needed to happen. It needed to happen. So let's get into the actual draft itself. And obviously, coming a week ago when we were together in Los Angeles talking about this, obviously the buzz of the day, and this was the day before the draft that we recorded the podcast, was that the Sharks were leaning towards Anton Frundell, and that a lot of people believed that it was going to happen. They end up taking Michael Misa, which we both, I think, towards the end that next morning, the information shifted dramatically. I think part of it was there was always a sense that there was this kind of competing interests in terms of which of those two players to take second overall. And it came down to, at the end, the offensive upside of Misa, and not necessarily losing as much of the secondary, like the secondary things like two-way play, that kind of thing, ends up going that way. But we both had Michael Misa as our second ranked prospect. In the end, that's the way that they go. It was going to be it probably would have been a tougher sell to the fan base to pass over Misa, which is another factor that I think people maybe discount, is that in a general manager's mind, they're also like, how do I justify X decision? But in the end, it was Michael Misa, and they get a player that now becomes part of a future top 6 that includes Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith, among others. And there's a real opportunity here for some tremendous and explosive offense out of the San Jose Sharks.
Without question. And like you said, like, I don't know about you, but I was getting carved online.
Me too.
Carved online. You were just hyping this up, trying to get interest. And I will say, I will say that part of our job is to have people interested in the draft, but we will never, and I speak for you on this one too, I feel comfortable with this. Yeah. We will never simply make something up to try to get clicks, to try to get interest. That's never going to happen, because we have integrity and we have a reputation that we want to maintain. Okay. Is that when we are putting stuff out there, and this is the time of year at the draft, at the combine, in the build up to free agency, there is so many rumors. And unfortunately, we are not all Elliot Friedman. We do not have 65 dialed in sources that are going to be like, Nick Ehlers to the Tampa Bay Lightning, 7 by 8.6, right? We don't get those texts too often. So sometimes we have to deal in the gray. We have to take all the things we're hearing, parse through them, filter out what we think is noise and what we think could be true based on the people we've worked with comfortably, the sources that have come through for us in the past, multiple sources saying these things. And then we go forward and we say, listen, there's a lot of talk that this might happen. We're not saying this is going to happen. People can say, what do you think is going to happen, Chris? And you can be like, you know what? I think this might happen, but nobody knows except for Mike Greer. Mike Greer was the only guy in that room who knew exactly who they're going to take. Chicago didn't know who they were going to get at 3. They had their hopes that it might be Michael Misa, but nobody knew. And at the end of the day, Greer said it like, oh, he was always our guy. And you know what? It might have been, but like, he did a fantastic job of keeping everybody guessing. And I think Mies is absolutely thrilled to be going to San Jose too. Of course, he would have wanted to go first overall. Everybody wants to go first overall when you're in that wheelhouse. But if you can't go first, why not head to California, set up shop next to Celebrini at even strength, play on that top power play, have Will Smith, have Dickey come in. Like, they have so many fun assets in San Jose, plus about $100 million in cap space moving forward here too. I'm telling you, the Sharks are going to be very, very exciting, and Mies is going to be a big, big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the nice thing is, if you're the Sharks, is you're playing with, you've already got your franchise cornerstone in Macklin Celebrini, and now it's just building on top of that. And the more you can support that player, the better. And I think that the argument for Frundell, and the reason that he ended up going number 3 as opposed to some of the other options there, is that you get that heavier, but also, he still has that scoring ability, goal scoring ability. And now that's what Chicago has at number 3. So as we talked about, and I know, Chicago fans, sorry for getting your hopes up that it seemed possible. And I think there was a lot of people in the scouting community who were like, I don't know, but this could, this looks good. So we both thought it was the way it was trending, it was going to go down that way. And then the next morning you start hearing it's going to be Misa. And now, Chicago ends up with Frundell. We're going to talk about Chicago's overall draft in a second, because they did some very interesting things at the end of the first round that I think bears some further discussion. But I did want to get to some of the other things. So we knew that there wasn't going to be consensus, right? We knew that you see Brady Martin go 5, you see, James Higgins ends up going 7, didn't fall quite as far as it looked like he could. If the Bruins didn't take him, I'm not sure where he would have went next, because I think that some of those, you see like Seattle ends up taking Jake O'Brien, like all these different things that kind of happen.
And Anaheim wanted McQueen. Possession.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we knew, like, eventually you find out, like, there's no way. And Anaheim was also the team that was best positioned to take a Roger McQueen. And by the way, love the jersey number 95, Lightning McQueen.
So sick.
In Disneyland World. But Disneyland World, that was a weird way to say that. But anyway, moving along. The other thing I wanted to talk about, the moment to me that brought, I think both you and I, we were sitting next to each other at the draft, and I did find out it was because we were in alphabetical order, not because we're podcast co-hosts. Elite Prospects.
It was?
It was.
Okay. I thought they were just bunking us together because we're boys.
It was funny. I was like, wow, that actually ended up working out. So, but the Pittsburgh Penguins get up there at number 11, and they announce Benjamin Kindle, from the Calgary Hitmen. I like the player. Had him as a first round draft pick. Had him 27th, I believe, 28th, maybe on my list. And he goes ahead of Cole Reshny. He goes ahead of a number of other players. He goes ahead of any of the premium defensemen that were still on the list. And then Pittsburgh also had 12, traded down, then traded back up later on to have 3 first-round picks. And you get 3 kicks at the can instead of 2. But the 2 options that are available at 11 and 12 are probably of a higher value than what you ended up getting later in the draft plus Kindle. So it was that moment for me. It wasn't quite the Moritz Seider moment, but it was one of those moments where it's like, okay. I don't know about this one. What were your initial thoughts when you saw that pick?
Yeah, it was interesting because, and I'd said it on the last show, is that, someone had said it to me, maybe they look to move up with 11, maybe they look to move back with 12. And so I thought that was really interesting, that slide back with 12 option. I was like, because in all likelihood, in almost every universe here, there was going to be 2 very good players at 11, 12. Now, time will tell if they were better players than, Bill Zonin, who they got at, what was that, 22 or something like that?
Yeah.
Will Horkoff, who they got at 24. And then Ben Kindle. I like Ben Kindle too. I think they took him about 10 spots too high. But,
Yeah.
if you really believe in a player, if you really believe, and he is, he put up 99 points this year in the West for the Hitmen. As soon as he stepped on the ice with Team Canada, when he came airlifted in late at the U18s, instantly, right? Instantly, you're like, the level of skill just jumped on this team. This kid is very, very intelligent, has loads of skill. So if you want to bet on that guy and you'd be like, that's our guy, we're betting on him, you know what? All the power to you. Because like you said, I had him as a first rounder. I think I had him, I can't remember. It might even been like 1920, something like that. So not too far off. But then to slide back, I think that then some of the questions start to rise, because it's like you got Victor Eklund sitting right there. You got Carter Bear sitting right there. You got Cash sitting right there. You got Reshny. You got all these guys that could have fit really, really nicely. And again, Bill Zonin, I think, is a borderline first rounder. But at 22, Will Horkoff, borderline first rounder. At 24, it's like they just seem like they left some meat on the bone.
Yeah.
It's kind of been a
That's
hallmark of Wes's drafts the last couple of years, where it's like almost like smartest guy in the room syndrome, potentially. And then, well, I guess we'll find out in 6 or 8 years if he is the smartest guy in the room.
Well, that's the thing that I came back to is I actually thought as they traded back, after they traded back, I was like, I think you could have probably gotten Ben Kindle at 22.
Yeah.
Now
I think probably
I
good.
don't know that for a fact, but I've talked to
No,
at least some in the scouting community that said he would have been there at 22. And then you can have one of those premium defensemen, which you need, because now you've got 3 forwards. Zonin
right?
and Horkoff very likely down your lineup.
For
Kindle
sure.
hopefully in your top 12 or top 6, I mean, sorry. But and there's no guarantees, right? Like you could have
No.
picked Kayshawn Aitchison and he might not have been a top 4 defenseman,
Or
as
Jackson
time goes
Smith.
on. Or
Yeah.
Jackson Smith. Yeah, exactly. So
Yep.
the thing is that the position the Penguins are in now is why I think this draft left a little more to be desired, because they are in a position where they're reaching a transitional phase. They have made so many decisions that suggest we are transitioning into a less competitive era in order to rebuild. Now, this was not the year that they were going to get that premium pick in terms of top 5, right? To make a significant impact in their prospect system. But I don't think they made enough of an impact with the picks that they did make in this draft overall. And so that's where, there's a lot of other things in terms of the guys they did end up getting later on. They did address defense with Peyton Kettles later. They did address. They also drafted Charlie Trethaway. Like they Brady Peddle. Like they found guys that will probably create some level of value for the slot that they were picked in. I just don't think, if I'm a Pittsburgh Penguins fan and I'm wanting to see splashes made in a very shallow pool, I feel like I'm left wanting a bit more. So that's where I came down on the Penguins overall draft. Like I said, I think their mid-round picks were fine, fair slot value. I think Will Horkoff is going to help. He's going to play in the league. Bill Zonin probably going to play in the league. And I think that Ben Kindle is going to play as well. Like 99-point guy in the WHL. It's just, again, we're talking about who gives you the highest level of upside. And I'm not sure that any one of those players, where they were picked, gives you the highest level of upside, but maybe they give you higher floors in the end, especially Horkoff and Zonin a little bit later.
Yeah. I'll say this is that, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think higher floors on especially Horkoff. I think Zonin's an interesting player, but the feet concern me.
Yes.
Horkoff's a pure athlete. He's like, worst case scenario, he's probably gonna be a 4th liner for you, but maybe he's a good 3rd who can kind of be like a matchup athletic nightmare sort of thing. Kindle, I would say, has a very high upside, very high, like pure offensive upside and IQ and stuff like that. I think that he has. It's just a lower percentage that he reaches at. So it's like, there's a world where it's like, holy smokes, maybe they're right. Ben Kindle's a 1st liner, and hey, Horkoff's actually like this really unique 3rd liner, and Bill Zonin's kind of like a tweener middle 6 guy too. And it's like, wow, they did really well. But there's also a world where it's like Kindle doesn't break right, and now you don't have any top 6 forwards. Horkoff's a 4th liner. Zonin doesn't actually become an NHLer, and then it's like, oh boy, that's 3 first-round picks, and you didn't hit on any of them. And I think that there's just as likely a chance that happens as all of them kind of breaking and making them look super smart.
Yeah, and I do think, like, if you are looking at Ben Kindle, you're saying he better be Nick Suzuki. If you are pinging this, like, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, because Suzuki's 13th overall pick, similar size.
Mm-hmm.
There were
Mm-hmm.
definitely questions about could he handle the two-way elements of, and obviously he has.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the other thing with Kindle is, like, you're looking at a similar size profile, similar skill level, some of the similar concerns that they had, but, like, that to me is what you're banking on if you are the Penguins, to take that player at 11.
Does he feel like Nick
You're
Suzuki to
expecting,
you?
not, no, he doesn't.
No, no, yeah.
Yeah, but
You never know.
it's an interesting. You never know. You never know.
You never
So
know. You never
so
know.
we'll see what happens with that. The other one that was surprising, not necessarily, like, we knew that we both said there's a chance that the Russians are going to go ahead of Ravensburg. Didn't know which ones it would be, Frolov versus Andrianov. It ended up being Andrianov. He's an interesting player for a number of reasons, Cam. Number one is there is a lot of debate about how tall he actually is. He's
Oh
listed
yeah.
6'2" some places, 6'0" other places, and I guess he was at the Gold Star camp, and a few people are like, "Ain't no way he's
6
6'2".
foot. Yeah.
So again, so you're taking the, and the other thing that Don Waddell said, they did get Jackson Smith earlier, like that pick. Then they got Malti Voss in the second round. And
Mm-hmm.
after the draft, Don Waddell said that those players were within their top 14 picks of their draft board, which is a good reminder, people, when you see our lists and you say that is bananas. I guarantee you would be shocked at the way some of these NHL lists look. And if you saw a list that had Andrianov and Malti Voss, who could not get a shift at the under 18 Worlds, in a
Couldn't
top
get a shift.
14,
Mm-hmm.
then you'd be saying, what? So, but let's talk about Andrianov, because I think that was the more shocking of the picks in the top 20, because we're talking about a potential 6-foot goalie who does play in the MHL. Russia has been developing goalies better than anybody right now. What did you think when you saw that pick? What do you think right now?
I was not surprised that it was Columbus at 20. We had heard that he really impressed at that Gold Star camp and had jumped, I was told, to the top of the pile for the goaltenders for a few teams after that. Now, I mean, he was the number one ranked goaltender in Europe too, so it's not like shocking. But there was some
Right.
concerns about Ravensburgen's hip too, which may have knocked him a little bit down. But it was maybe my favorite part. Maybe my favorite part about him going 20 was that I instantly got a text from a team side person who very knowledgeable, and they just said, a 6-foot goalie who just signed for 5 more years in Russia, and he isn't even 18. And I was like, the age fraud accusations are back. Like, we are back, baby. How old is he? Is this like Levshinov looking like he's 30 last year? What are we talking about here? Hey, Grigorenko's is 105. No, it's so I thought that was enjoyable anyway. So I think it ruffled some feathers, but on that whole, like, all in their top 14 too, it's like, yeah, I think that they maybe had Jackson Smith like top 5. I think they loved Jackson Smith
Yeah.
just by how they were glowing about him. And obviously he was going to be the top of those 3 that were taken that they had in their top 14. Yeah, I think that they were absolutely thrilled to get Jackson Smith at that spot too. But Andrianov, it's going to be a wait. It's going to be a wait on this kid. But we talked about why it made sense too. And when we were making our boards, right, you get into the 20s and you're like, boy, do I feel good about taking any of these guys in the first round? Maybe
Right.
1 or 2 of them. But it's like, why not take a cut on somebody that it's like, could it be the next Shesterkin? Well, if it's not, oh, well, we already got Jackson Smith. So we got that pick locked in. We took a cut on this kid. It didn't work out. That's okay. Or, hey, look at that. Now we've got a 23-year-old coming over from Russia, ready to step in and be our number 1. It's money in the bank. You don't feel bad about using a 20th overall pick there at all at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, is if you think he's going to be a number 1 goalie, I mean, I just think that the odds are against you when it is a 6-foot goalie. The odds are against you, and I think that the other thing is too is you put your faith in your goalie people, the people that are in charge of evaluating them. How many in-person views did their top evaluators get of him this year?
Yeah.
Zero,
Don't
because they
don't know if
can
they
you
have
don't go
anybody
to
over there.
Russia.
But
Right,
wait, do they
right.
have a
So, like,
Russian-based guy? They might have someone
well,
in
I'm sure they
Russia.
have a
Some
Russian-based
teams
guy,
do.
and I'm sure
Yeah.
that the goalies, the goalie guys are watching the film and everything, but it's
Yeah.
just, it's not like, can, Don
Medvedev.
Waddell pop over there to make a top 20 pick,
Ye yeah. Yeah.
and that, you look back at some of the draft history of Don Waddell's term as a general manager over the years, and it's very hit or miss on some of it. It's improved greatly since the Thrashers days, but I was talking about, like, this, he's never been averse to taking swings. I remember back, the Atlanta
No.
Thrashers took a young man by the name of Dalton Levaye in the first round out of, I believe it was like Quebec Junior B that they took him out of, and
Mm.
he played at Michigan State. He was a average college hockey player, didn't come close to earning a contract as a first round draft pick. And like, this is not that, because I think Andrianov has bona fides in a different way.
Mhm.
But it was one of those moments where it's like, what? So yeah, that was fun
That
too.
was fun.
I did
Yeah.
enjoy it. I between those two goalies, I do prefer Semyon Frolov, the size profile, different things like that. The two Russian goalies that end
Yeah.
up going higher. Ravensburgen does go in the first round, goes to the Sharks with that draft. I think
Interesting.
that again, at those, in those later 30s and the mid 20s, when we're talking about, is this guy even a top 5, or top 4 defenseman, or a top 6 winger, or anything like that? I think you're happy to get a goalie that at least has the chance to be a number 1. Let's talk about some of the guys that fell a little bit, or one guy that fell a little bit. And it's a guy that we both love. I had him 8. I'm not
Mm.
sure, I can't remember where you had him on your board, but Victor
8.
Eklund goes
Yeah.
16th. And also Kayshawn Aitchison, a guy we both love, goes right
Mhm.
after him at 17th in those picks that
Mhm.
everyone was thinking maybe this is the play to get James Higgins. And so if you felt that 16 and 17 was going to have you any shot of getting in the Higgins range, those alone would not have done it. And then you look at the rest of what the Islanders have, and it's like, unless you're like throwing in Romanov or Barzell, things you don't want to give up, apparently, then you're not going to get that player. So they end up getting Victor Eklund 16th, Kayshawn Aitchison 17th. That was one where it feels like there are going to be some teams that do regret letting Eklund slip as far as he did. Your thoughts, Mr. Robinson?
Nasty value, incredible value. Darsh even said it. They had no idea that those two players were going to be sitting there for them at 16, 17. He also admitted, yeah, we were actively trying to package those picks up. The whole goal of moving Dobson and getting those picks was to get back in and get James Higgins. And yes, they tried Utah at 4. They tried San Jose at 2. They were trying all sorts of different ways. I think they tried Boston at 7 before Higgins went there. And I was told that there was kind of a framework in place that contingent on Higgins being there at 7, potentially Boston moving back into those spots too, and it just didn't work. But for them to have to sit at that spot, and frankly, they got a little bit of help from Philly and from Pittsburgh going a little off the board there. Philly moving up and getting Nesbitt allowed those players,
Yeah.
and everyone kind of falling in line after that. Like, I've got no problem with Carter Bear, I got no problem with Jackson Smith, even Vancouver going Braden Coots. They needed a center prospect. They got themselves a nice 2-way right shot center prospect right there. Obviously, we both preferred Eklund ahead of him, but that's okay. But they got some help to get there, and then boy, oh boy, like they're. I was getting some people texting me from Dev Camp too and being like, Victor Eklund's the best player here. And I was like, yeah, he's going to be good. And, there's some pretty good players at that camp, including one Mr. Schaefer. It's like,
and Victor is he's further ahead than a lot of these guys too. He probably has a shorter NHL timeline overall. You let him play one more year in the SHL, you bring him on over. He probably, if he doesn't immediately hop into your lineup, he's your first call up out of the AHL, I would imagine. And, I think here's a question for you, Cam. I'm put you on the spot again. Would you rather have just James Higgins or both Victor Eklund and Kayshawn Aitchison? If that's the trade, and it wouldn't have been, but if it was,
no,
you'd rather have James Higgins?
I wouldn't.
You'd
I
rather
would
have
rather
the
have the
two.
2. I'd rather have the 2. I would rather have 2, which is, and it came to my mind when you said, like, 16 and 17 wasn't getting it done, and that's true, because 16 and 17 on paper don't equate to that level of value. But Victor
Right.
Eklund and Keishon Aitchison, I think, do equate to that kind of value. So yes, on, like, if it's just like I need my future number one center, hopefully, okay, give me James Haggins, which is why I would understand if that was the offer to Boston to switch, that they'd be like, no, we're gonna keep this kid. We've watched him at BC here. We're gonna roll with this. But they didn't know that it was actually for Aitchison and Eklund. And maybe that would have changed their mind on it, depending on what their draft board looked like. But no, I think give me those two, because I think that Eklund can be a very viable top six option, maybe even like a complimentary first line guy like a Seth Jarvis or a Konechny. And then Cash, I think, has all sorts of outcomes, and one of which is like a really unique energy setting, table setting number, on a second pair sort of thing, or maybe this like highly impactful 4-5 guy like that. But I do think that
Yeah.
there's a world where he's playing 20 minutes a night for you for a lot of years, and bringing a unique element on top of that, like
Yeah.
really abrasive, skillful style of Eklund. Put those two up against Haggins in the playoffs, and I think I'd probably take the two.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion to have, because I think while I would take the trade.
Quality,
I
yeah.
would give me, if I'm the Islanders, it's just a different dynamic with Hagens.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Like when Hagens
Yeah.
got picked by Boston, did you hear the "Let's go Hagens" chant from the people in Islanders jerseys? Let's go, hey! Like
Oh,
there was
nice.
a chant going as he got picked by Boston, and and so it's one of those things where it's like, hey, yes, he could potentially be the number one center. You're also gonna sell tons of jerseys, all those different things. I would probably do the trade. However, what I will say is, what an incredible consolation prize. It's more than a
Mm-hmm.
consolation prize. It is a package that helps you get better. That's my number two winger and my number two defenseman, and you drafted the number one player in the draft. You now have the building blocks on which you are kind of
Amen.
starting this hybrid rebuild, where you still have some of your long-term pieces in your goaltender, in your number one center. You lock down Romanov long-term. You've got your number one defenseman in Schaefer. There's all these things that happened. I think all in all, the Islanders are in a better position now than when they went into the draft, which is all you can really hope for, and that's a big one. But
Yeah.
the one other surprise that I wanted to bring up, and I'm going to roll this into another kind of topic that I have on here, and it's just what the Chicago Blackhawks have done. They trade up to get a third first-round pick. They've had multiple drafts now where they have picked 3 times in the first round. They get Anton Frendel with their number 3 pick. They get Václav Nestrasil, maybe earlier than would have been expected, but you and I were both here in the Nestrasil
We were
buzz,
on
and
that.
he's a 6'6" winger.
Yep.
And then they draft Mason West. They drafted a quarterback in the back half of the first round. Now, here's the thing. Mason West is going to play high school football this year. Everyone that was drafting him knew that that's what he wanted to do. I'm sure you could try to talk him out of it, but I don't think that certain teams will. He is a Division I NCAA recruit in football. He did just commit to hockey to play at Michigan State. All of these things there. The other thing, he is a 6'6" center that can skate, has pretty decent hands, that can make some
Great.
plays, that has never once focused on hockey solely. It has always been multiple sports. It is probably the most fascinating pick. Will it be a good pick over time? That's the part that I think remains to be seen. But when you saw the quarterback off the board late in the first round, what was your thought, Cam Robinson?
Well, I liked it. I projected him to go in the first round. And here's a fun little story for you. I was told that the LA Kings really liked Mason West. I was under strict instructions that I couldn't share that out loud, though. But I may have slipped it into the mock draft where I mocked Mason West to the LA Kings. And it was all set up. The oohs and ahs from the local fans that were jammed into that Peacock Theater, all 6 or 7 of them that weren't related to family members. And so I was told after the draft, okay, this is interesting. So Kenny Holland's now in LA, right? That they fully intended to take Mason West at 24, decided that he would be there at 31 still, traded back. We watched the exodus of fans leave the Peacock Theater as soon as they moved that pick and slid back to 31. So he killed the buzz on it. Thought that he'd still be able to get Mason West, and nope. Chicago jumps in front, takes him. This is the exact same thing that happened a few years ago with Jesper Wallstedt. He thought that he could slide back when he was with Edmonton there, slide back a few spots and still get Wallstedt. And Minnesota was like, no. And they jumped ahead, jumped the queue and beat him. So that's twice that I know of that rolled the dice, and it cost him Mason West.
That's interesting. Yeah. And the thing is, so this is now 2 straight drafts, or is it 3 that Chicago drafted 3 times? I think it's 3. They drafted 3 times in the first round. Okay, they drafted twice the year they got Bedard and Oliver Moore, but last 2 years they had 3 first-round draft picks. And I believe they had 3 in 2022 as well. So, this has been stockpiling the first rounders, and to get the guys that maybe aren't the best available necessarily, but the guys that you want. Now, that whole thing with the Kings is really interesting because it does, they had that next pick at the very end there. They do end up taking Henry Brustevich, which is a completely different way that you have to go at that point between the two. But looking back at Chicago's draft history, and that's why the other reason I wanted to talk about Mason West. 2022, they draft Sam Rinzel out of Minnesota High School, played a little bit in the USHL, let him go to the USHL for another year. They drafted him with the full knowledge that it is going to be 3 to 4 years before we even consider signing this player. And he goes in, he played his first 9 games as a pro last year. At the end of the season, he had 5 assists. He looked great. He also was one of the best defensemen in college hockey last year. Last year, one of their last picks, Merrick Vanacker, a guy who was injured, a guy that, was not going to be was not going to play for a while, but he kind of could fit down their lineup. This year, they go 2 6'6" behemoths. Václav Nestrasil, who had a tremendous Clark Cup playoffs. That was the difference. His playoff run was a big factor in his moving into the first round. Now, I was a late arriver on him, and I felt like even as I finished my rankings, I'm like, I still feel like I haven't given this kid enough credit, and had him in the the mid 40s. And more scouts I talked to as we got closer to the draft is like, this kid's going in the first round. There are at least 3 or 4 teams in that late range that are gonna probably take him. And Chicago was never really expressly mentioned, but is one of them. Here's the other thing about drafting Mason West, and why drafting Mason West in the first round is actually probably the best decision. If you don't sign Mason West, if he decides, you know what, I am going to play football. I am going to play football. You get a compensatory draft pick. Now, you used assets to move up, but they had tons of assets. You know what else Chicago has? Too many prospects. You have to start. You can't just keep picking players and stockpiling players. You don't have contracts for all of them. Yeah. Of the teams that were able to draft Mason West, and it would have been great for the Kings because I think that they certainly had, they don't have necessarily the prospect depth at this point that Chicago does, but they have NHL depth that Chicago does not have at the moment. Yeah. But now so again, it's this great opportunity. Plus, it's a player who might have the highest ceiling of anybody in the draft because we've never seen what this kid looks like when he's focused on hockey. So he's going to play football. He's going to go play for the Fargo Force. It's going to be one of the best stories in hockey next year, assuming he doesn't
after Christmas
to a Division I program. So I'm easily one of the most fascinating moments, and I'm glad that you brought that one up. A couple of the guys that fell a little further than we thought. What about Malcolm Spence? What did you think about him slipping all the way into the mid-second round?
Well, I'd like to say I was surprised until I did my bold predictions, and then I went around the horn and I texted a bunch of scouts and execs, and I was like, "Hey, toss me a bold prediction of your own." And one guy said Malcolm Spence falls to the second round. And I was like, "Oh." And so then I got to digging a little bit. Why do you think this? Why do you think that? And he made some good points. And one of them you had brought up previously. I'm not sure if it was on the show or not, but is that at the combine when they were measuring him, right? He's forever been measured at 6'2", and there he was, straight as a board up against the wall, and they measure him up at 6. And he's like, no. And he shot it down. He made him measure him again, came back again. getting that neck up as high as he can, still 6 foot. So now all of a sudden it's like not a 6'2" winger who plays, with inconsistent engagement and energy. When he's on, right? Like he plays a hard
Yeah.
north-south game, has some skill, but it's not always on. It's not always on with Spence. Great kid, really great personality. I think it's people are drawn to him. I love him. I like as a person. I think he's great guy. But yeah, I think that it kind of knocked him down again. Is like, what's he going to be at the NHL level? Now, he was still in my first round. I still probably would have taken him ahead of a few guys that went in the first round, and that's just fine.
Yep.
But like you said, NHL draft lists they look a lot different than ours, especially this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to be, is the offensive upside great enough on him to have taken him earlier? You look at a guy like Jacob E. Wozniak was another guy that fell way farther into the second round. I knew he would probably be a second round pick,
compete,
even though I had him a little higher. But still, like, but then you have other guys like, Riker Lee, who was a tweener to be picked. He goes in the first round. We saw Linden Lajkovic fall all the way to 27. And so all of a sudden the board is starting to look a lot different. And it was interesting to kind of see where it all went. Now, here's another one. Now, there's a couple guys that didn't get picked, but one guy that did just got in there. Was a guy I know you liked, and a guy that had a really strong end to the season, and that's Philip Ekberg. Played for the Ottawa 67s last year, ends up, playing at the under-18 Worlds, set Sweden's scoring record at that tournament, was, outstanding in the tournament and just automatic in the tournament. He goes in the 7th round, which is better than not getting drafted, but only just by a little bit. He ends up getting picked 221 by who else? The Carolina Hurricanes. If you are a small guy with good numbers, you got a shot to get picked by Carolina. Ekberg goes 221. Was that one? Were you surprised that it took him that long to get picked, or no?
Yeah, I thought he would go in like the 3rd or 4th, to be honest with you. I thought kind of most of the year he was like a middle round guy, and then he almost matched his season long goal totals in 7 games in Texas, right? At the U18s.
Yeah.
10-7 versus 16-53 for the 67s. And let's be honest here, the 67s were not a highly, rolling club this year. I wouldn't say they were a well-oiled machine up front there. He wasn't utilized to the best of his ability, and all of a sudden he goes there and he's playing with good players, and hey, he pops. But, he's not a very big guy, and he's not a very fast guy. And so it's like, I didn't think he was going to be a high-end prospect here going early, but you slip all the way to the 7th. Like, does anybody mine for value better than the Hurricanes, right? Like, they don't hit on everything, because nobody does, but they take so many upside plays. And it's like, I mocked them, right? My first mock draft was the Carolina Hurricanes slide back to the 2nd round, pick up a couple extra picks, and still get the player that they want. And that's exactly what happened. Like, that's right. Yeah. They do it time and time again. And then all of a sudden they smell blood in the water. And they go, okay, let's use some of this value, and we'll jump up and we'll grab Limitov, right? Get ourselves a free Kerbin Limitov out of it, right? It's just, so I love the way they utilize things. I love the way that they look at it from like a holistic level of it's like, we want upside, we want to take swings, we want to have as many darts as possible. Why not keep sliding back? We're still going to get this guy that we like, that nobody else seems to like. And then if we have 25 darts that we've thrown and 2 of them work, well, we're laughing, right? We're ahead of the game already. So no, I love what Carolina does. And I think Ekberg fits that role. Probably not going to be a player, but maybe he is.
Yeah, that's the funny, the thing that I said about Carolina's draft this year is it is a whole lot of maybe. There's a lot of maybe on this. And that's the way it goes. And they took 4 Russian players in the draft, including who I think is one of the best goalies in Semyon Frolov. They took Charlie Serrato much earlier than I thought anyone would take him, but I love the work ethic. He fits them. He fits their identity. Ivan Rabkin, who tanked the combine, didn't not on purpose. He just did. He did. But at 62, and then you get Limitov, who is a guy that at least at various points was like, hey, this guy could go a fair amount higher. A big defenseman,
first rounder.
And so they get those guys and so it's interesting to watch. But as we look through, though, when you say who had the best draft, I think the easy call, and we'll just wrap this real quick. The easy call
Mm.
is the Islanders. They had 3 first-round picks. They get the best player in the draft in Matthew Schaefer. They get 2 guys, I think, with tremendous value. They also get Daniil Prokhorov at
Yep.
42, who that's
Romano,
a 6'6" guy that can score and hit people.
angry
Luca
man.
Romano,
Yeah.
big, good speed at 74. Thomas
Yeah.
Politin, who was just the number 1 pick in the import draft. Sam Larilla,
Yep.
USHL Defenseman of the Year. Burke Hood, a goalie with some upside, and Jacob Kwasnica, who could be, a long-term, maybe he'll play in your bottom 6 kind of guy that down the road. They got a ton of picks, great value in the first, a
Yep.
potential first rounder at 42, and it's hard to say that anything more than Matthew Darsh's first draft as a general manager was a home run. Any objection?
Great success. Great success. Great success. They were. I said it, and it sounds funny to say because it's like they lost the Dobson trade, but then they won the draft, and they
Right.
won the draft because of the Dobson trade. So it's
Because of
like,
the Dobson trade. Yeah, exactly.
so it's like
Yeah.
you probably take that. You probably take that swing, right? It's like, yes, on the value of a loan, you don't give up on a 25-year-old right-handed number 1 defenseman unless you are absolutely sure about it. And I know that like Columbus was right down to the wire, and they were devastated to not land that player because it's like they just don't come up. They don't come available ever. So that's a big hit to their roster currently, but it's like, yeah, they hit on almost every pick for value and upside too, and tangible upside. So no, I think they did very, very well.
Yeah, and who else did you like in terms of classes? What were some of the teams that just stood out to you that you're like, oh yeah, that was pretty darn good?
I like what the Flames have done now in consecutive drafts. I like what they've done. I liked Reshny at 18. I thought he was going to go earlier. I think that there were some teams right behind were really hoping he would continue to fall. I think there's some teams that might regret passing on him. Colin Potter at 32, right? Arguably the best skater in the whole class sitting there again. I probably would have taken him ahead of a few of those guys that went. That's all great. Theo Stockselius, I really like him too. Right. I think he's a very interesting player at 54 or 55, wherever he went. Maceo Phillips is just like the biggest massive athlete in the class. I'm not sure I see the pure upside there, but it's like you bet on an athlete at his size. Aiden Lane, like I liked a lot of what Calgary did, but they weren't alone. I liked what Nashville did. I liked a lot of what Philadelphia did on day 2, going big boys. And then I think the Sharks did really well too, outside of Michael Misa. So there's a whole bunch of teams I thought did quite well.
Yeah, and I think day 2 is where you can really make an impact. And I think like Philly had a surplus of early day 2 picks, and they got guys like Shane Van Shaggy was a guy that looked like he might slip into the first round at one point. You get
good player.
You get a lot of real talent there. The one thing that we didn't talk about though, that of the surprises, you mentioned it, but just Nesbitt at 12. That was another one where it felt a little bit. And I know he's a guy that you were much lower even than me on. When you saw Nesbitt at 12, and not only at 12, but to trade up to 12 to get him.
Yeah.
Is that solely because they basically were like, Martone is the best player. We desperately need a center, but Martone is the best player. So we're going to take Martone. And then they have to go up and get Nesbitt, who has skill, has size. As Keith Jones says, he looks like a flyer. But does he skate like a flyer?
Yeah. Does he skate like a top 6 center? No, he doesn't. So no, I did not like that. I think that you could have sat and got him at 22 or whatever they were supposed to be picking. And if they didn't, just go and get a higher skilled player and see what happens. Like, I know that things would have been different if they didn't take Nesbitt, right? That board might have fallen differently, and there might have been a center sitting there for them at 22 still. But it's fine because, like you said, I really liked some of the assets that they targeted on day 2, and I think it made up for it on some of those bigger body, high upside plays. So it's not the end of the world. We knew that Nesbitt was going to go higher. I think that they thought he was going to go pretty soon, which is why they jumped up to do it, because they were like, okay, we need something down the middle. We need some meat down the middle. This is basically the only one there, unless you wanted to really roll the dice on Mason West. But I think that overall Philly came out of that, very strong. Nitpick at Nesbitt, but I think the rest of their board did really, really well. And then Nashville too, right? Brady Martin at 5, going to be a good pick. Cameron Reed at 21. Cameron Reed's a good player. He's a sneaky player.
Yeah.
I like Riker Lee. Wheeler, Scott loves Riker Lee. Thought he was. Jacob Rombach was in my first round. They got him on day 2. Ivan Kovic. Kid's a stud for Team Canada. Yeah, he's undersized, but you roll the dice on him. Alex Wang, right? Yeah. Another really mobile guy. Like, they did some things. I really liked what Nashville did with the picks that they had, 2, 3 in the first. So there's a few teams I think that did really well. Not a ton of teams that I thought did really poorly, generally.
Right.
In this class.
Yeah, I'd say that's right. Teams that didn't have picks, like in our draft grades, you're automatically going to get, you had 3 picks and not one until the 4th round. Too bad. You're not going to get a good grade. You're just not. But that was what it was. And even Colorado and Florida had like a billion 7th rounders or whatever, 6th and 7th rounders. There's just not a lot that you can do. But yeah, I would agree. There were moments that felt, whoa, that was a surprise. But again, if you're Philly, if you're Pittsburgh, the totality of your class has helped push things forward for your organization. It's not like you set yourselves back, at least as far as we can tell. Time will tell in the end. But yeah. Last topic on 2025. You look at the boards. I think I might have 3 or 4 guys from my top 100 that did not go. Happens every year. Usually you hope it's, fewer than 2 usually. But it's the way it goes sometimes. And obviously, typically the players that don't go are the smaller players or guys that maybe didn't have the same level of pedigree. I'll give you one. One guy for me was Lev Katzen. He did not get picked. It's not necessarily a surprise overall because he is a smaller player, 5'8", but he had, well over a point per game. And when he moved to the OHL from the USHL, well into the, he's going to Penn State next year. Had a strong showing as a really solid on the power play for Canada at the under 18 Worlds. I thought he had a good last minute. I think some things, there's some concerns about maturity, other things like that. The teams were definitely not keen on. In the end, he was a player that I listed. I think the skill level is very high. I think the hockey sense is very high. I think there is enough of a compete level for him. Not drafted. That probably was one of the ones where I was like, okay. And there are a few others, like Luke Mistelbacher is a re-entry guy, different players like that you're like, oh, that's it. That's interesting. But in the end, that was my guy. Who did you have for somebody you were surprised didn't get drafted?
Yeah, and Katzen's another one too. The size obviously is a killer for him, but I like you had heard a couple of things that maybe he didn't thrill people throughout the year and at the combine too with his interview processes. Loads of skill though. Really liked him at the USHL even last year. Thought he hoping he was going to grow a bit. But Bruno Osmanis for me. Okay, we ranked him 55, I think, on the EP board. So not a big guy either. He's sub 6 foot, about 175 pounds. Right winger, but really well rounded. I would say. Played well above a point per game in the J20. He's a Latvian playing in Sweden. Played almost 30 games in the Hockey Allsvenskan. Put up some points. Was above a point a game at the World Juniors for Latvia. I thought he was good. I think he's a plus skater. I think he's a very good passer. His Mitch Brown and Lassie doing the micro stats on him. His slot passes, his expected primary assists per 60 were through the roof. He's able to create space for himself. I was really surprised that I thought that there would be a team out there that would have looked at this kid and been like, with a little bit of time, a little bit of resource, a little bit of patience, he could be a really nice middle 6 option down the line. And he went right through that draft class. So I would say Osmanis was the surprise for me.
Yeah. And I think that, especially after when you have guys that perform on a stage like the World Juniors, it at least gets them on the radar, right? Typically. And maybe it doesn't lead to them being picked, but it does get them on the radar. And I thought that, that's a very fair one. All right. So 2025, it was fun while it lasted. And I'm not sure that it was all that fun while it lasted. Sayonara.
And then we tie a bow in it. It's over.
Really
Whew.
glad that you are not a draft year anymore, because we now move on to 2026. And we're going to do it right here on this podcast too. We're going to buzz through it a little bit, because obviously we're talking, hey, a lot is going to happen in a year. I put out my way too early top 10, and there's a reason it's way too early. There's a lot of movement. Ivan Rapkin was on my way too early top 10 last year. And obviously he ends up going 62nd
You
this year. So we'll see
fool.
how that goes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. What an idiot. But
You
anyway,
fool.
that was all me. So there is excitement about the very, very top of this class. Now, what I will say about
Is there?
2026 is, as you say, well, is it deeper? Here's the thing. Another class for USA, not as good. Another class for
Not so
Finland,
good.
not as good. So you when you lose two big countries like that are producing players, it does limit
Stings.
the overall depth of your draft. However, there's this one player that you may have heard of who's pretty good at hockey.
Daxon Rudolph.
You know, well, hey, that's a great name, and he is going to be
And
a
he's
high
good at
pick, I'm
hockey.
sure.
Yeah.
He is good at hockey, but the guy that we're talking about is number 72, Gavin McKenna, 72 in your playbooks, number 1 on your projection. Cam, we're at this stage where before we get into, like, he's the number 1 guy. It's beyond dispute at this point. The one thing I will say, sub 6 foot winger, or 6'1", 6'0" winger.
No,
6'0"
wait.
winger,
Yeah.
5, wing, and so, like, is that the premium, like when you talk about Macklin Celebrini and Connor Bedard and, whoever else, and you say, well, all these guys are centers typically. He is a winger. However, he is about to enter into this, free agency is going on right now. And by the way, nice work on the Evan Bouchard scoop there, Mr.
Thank
Robinson.
Yes.
That was a big one. And
that was a big one.
Here's what we got, though. Gavin McKenna is free agency in the NHL kind of sucked this year in general. Gavin McKenna, his free agency right now, the recruitment of Gavin McKenna is one of the most fascinating things. He is deciding, and you and I both know based on sources, 2 schools are in the mix. That's it, to play NCAA hockey. We look at the guys like Max Celebrini and Adam Fantilli and all these players that have played college hockey. Well, they were committed to college before they had really established themselves as the guy. But now these schools are getting a chance to recruit the guy right before his draft year.
Yeah.
We know he went on visits. We know it's down to 2 schools. It's Michigan State and it's Penn State. One of those 2 schools is going to land the biggest recruit that we've ever seen in college hockey. What do you think the difference is going to come down to, Cam? I have my opinions. I'm sure you have yours. Plus, I mean, we also have some educated opinions as well based on sourcing and different things. It's my understanding that he's getting more NIL from one of those schools than the other, if it comes down to it. But when you're about to make millions in the NHL, maybe that doesn't sway the decision as much. So what do you think? What are the deciding factors here between Michigan State and Penn State?
So, like you said, he went and visited MSU or Penn State on Sunday, MSU on Monday. Gonna go home this week, sit down with the family, sit down with the advisors, and come to a decision. And so, yes, Penn State, no one can really match Penn State's NIL package. I think that they're really blowing it up this year. Pagula's really dipping a bunch of cash into there, and we saw that, right? Didn't he give $80 million to get them into Div 1 back in 2012 or whatever it was? I think it was an $80 million investment. So they're not hurting for cash. Every player that I've talked to that has been considering this move over and has gone and visited Penn State, and like you said, we have Katzen going there, we have Jackson Smith going there, we have Luke Mises going there, that have just a handful of the ones that have decided to go to Penn State for next season. Not to mention a couple that are planning to go the year after. They've all been blown away by the facilities, by the atmosphere. We're talking Penn State, like it is in the hub, major football school, major athletic school. Went to the Frozen Four last year, made it to the semifinals, right? Like they're on track. They're going to be returning some of their key players. They're going to be in the conversation to compete for a championship this year. and they're offering, kind of a really desirable student athlete overall experience. MSU returning Isaac Howard, returning what's the center for Minnesota? Charlie
Stramel.
Charlie Stramel, thank you.
Yep.
Charlie Stramel. They got Trey Augustine coming back, arguably the best goaltender in the nation. Big time stuff. Oh, and here's my buddy Caden Lindstrom coming from Medicine Hat, 4th overall to CBJ. Nobody, even if Gavin goes to Penn State, MSU is probably the favorites to win the Natty this year. You add Gavin McKenna to that mix, an instant Hobey Baker threat to play along with the current reigning Hobey Baker winner in Howard. It would feel like destiny for them. That, I had one person say that if Gav goes to MSU and they end up losing 2-3 games this year, that might be a disappointment. Maybe like, how'd they lose those games? Right? Like that's how high the expectations will be. So best package potentially for money and overall experience. East Lansing maybe doesn't have the same cachet as Penn State does. MSU though, great program, develops NHLers. Nighty, right? Nightingale, the head coach there, is well respected. Great guy. We all love him. All his players love him. And the best chance to win. And so that is what McKenna now has to weigh out. Penn State still has a good chance to win. Going to be surrounded by good players, have all sorts of stuff going for you there too, off ice. And then you've got MSU that gives you the best chance to win and also has, state-of-the-art facilities and athletic training and all that good stuff too. So he can't make a bad decision, I think, is the end of the day. There is no wrong decision here, but for one school and their fan base, there is, and it's the other one. So someone's going to have a broken heart at the end of this.
Someone is going to have a broken heart. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is one other thing that I think Michigan State has that a lot of hockey say big secret weapon, and that's Will Morlock, their strength and conditioning coach and player performance guy that has been that is another thing that I've heard is kind of the real pull for a lot of people. He came out of the Brian Gallivan's GVN, went to the Buffalo Sabres, was at the national team development program. There is a ton of respect for that gentleman, what he does. So here's the thing that I think Penn State has. The best pitch that they have at this point is, yes, I think that in terms of all of the hockey reasons, Michigan State may have more advantages than Penn State. The other thing Penn State hasn't had is they've never developed an NHL regular at their program.
Yeah.
Which is a problem in recruiting. Yeah. That said, Michigan State has this well-established culture, well-established history, all that stuff. Penn State is still looking for that identity. If you're Gavin McKenna, you can say, I am the program builder. I am the guy that came here and changed the tide for this program, that did all of these things and I think that is going to be appealing, because that's also what he's going to be at the NHL level. He's going to be the guy that's saying, oh, you are the chosen one. You are the future. You are what we're, I think to me, he can't make a wrong decision. No matter where he goes, he's going to succeed. He's going to get stronger. He's going to play well. He's going to have an opportunity. I do think that Michigan State has the more talented team to put him with in terms of guys to play on his line and other things like that. They have the best chance to win between the two teams, but there is that opportunity to be a program builder, a guy that really, not only, Terry Pagula bought the building, built the program from nothing, all that stuff. But until you have that guy, and if Gavin McKenna, the thing is like, not only Penn State, yes, they are offering more. There is not a single program that was in the mix that could benefit more from having a Gavin McKenna say yes to them. Because they haven't had that level, like having Jackson Smith say yes recently. Jackson Smith is the best recruit they have ever had.
Yeah. Until
possibly this one. So that's the thing about Penn State, is they are offering something different in that, hey, you are our future, basically. They'll still have a bright future with or without Gavin McKenna. Great. Yeah, for 1 year. But I think there's a lot there. So 2 great opportunities for Mr. Gavin McKenna. And I wondered for a second there, I heard a little buzz there. I wondered if Cam had gotten the news already.
Not yet. We're waiting.
Yeah. So that decision, by the time you listen to this, it'll probably be mere days away, I would imagine.
Yeah,
And it,
anytime.
it, it makes a big difference. So, all right. I did want to talk about the rest of the 2026 class. Everybody knows about Gavin McKenna. You probably don't know as
Hmm.
much about what's next. And there is a lot to like. There are a number of defensemen out of the WHL that are going to be very high draft picks. There are a number of guys that are going the college route next year. There are a number of guys in Europe that you're going to want to know. I want to start things off here. We're going to buzz through these guys super quick, Cam, to get to our segments and get out of here for the summer. But Keaton Verhoff played for the Victoria Royals last season, was outstanding for them all year long. He is going to the University of North Dakota with his teammate Cole Reshney next season.
Hmm.
He is young and will be young when he is drafted. He is one of the youngest players in this draft class. Tell us a little bit more about Keaton Verhoff, the 17-year-old now, just turned 17, behemoth.
He good. He is very good. Yeah, I got to see him lots. Playing for Victoria, we got to see him at the 18s, playing top power play minutes. You know, he's so good. He'll be at the Holinka this year. You and I are both taking a pass on going to Slovakia for 5 days in August. My wife is not happy with me. She thinks I should be going. But no, he's very, very good. And I think as of today, probably the favorite to go number 2. If we're being real,
Yeah.
I think right out the gate, I think that's a fair, just because of the size profile, the positional profile, with Gav at 1, and then, the forwards behind him, like Ivar Stenberg, and we'll talk about him in a sec, but it's just, again, just maybe not fits with what NHL teams love to do at the very top of the draft, unless it's like a super special player like McKenna. So yeah, no, Verhoff, and going to Nodak, Jackson Smith going to Penn State, he just went 14th overall, could have been a top 10 pick, super smooth, 6'3", didn't just dominate the West. I wonder how he's going to transition early on in the season to Penn State. I don't have much concerns about Keaton Verhoff, who's almost, probably over a year younger, going to Nodak, how he's going to transfer. I actually think he'll have a smoother transition. So yes, he's a very, very good player.
Yeah, and you mentioned Stenberg, 6 foot.
Mm-hmm.
He's again, he's a winger. So we've got the two top forwards that we're talking about right now are wingers, which is fine. They're really good.
Yeah.
But the thing about Stenberg is he goes in to Frölunda last year. We were talking about him. It looked like college was wrapped up. He's leaving. He's going to BU or wherever it ended up being next season. Doesn't happen. Because Frölunda's like, hey, wait a minute. How about a pro contract, young man? Not only that, how about some top 6 minutes in the playoffs where he had 6 points in 12 games? I watched a lot of Frölunda's playoff run. We had most of their games on FloHockey during the playoffs. I'm watching it and I'm saying, how is this guy not draft eligible until next year? And he did have 13
Almost
points
was.
at the under-18 Worlds. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. That is an important factor. 15 days
late 07
past 15 days past the cutoff, so he will be probably the oldest player selected in the draft, and that isn't a re-entry, the oldest first year eligible player. And he's a very intriguing player. 53 points in 27 games at the J20 level. You and I both saw him at the under 18 Worlds in person. I mean,
so good.
He's a dude.
He's a dude for sure. I think that J20 mark on a per game basis is the new record too. And then before he got up jumped, to the SHL. So he is so talented. But again, he's a 6 foot, 180 pound winger. Dynamic. He is certainly dynamic, and I got all the time in the world. Very excited to be sinking my teeth into some more Stenberg take. I bet you I've already got like 15 reports on him already. It's going to be gross. In the guide next year, it's going to be nothing but Cam Robinson and Jimmy Hamrin, our Swedish guy, probably. No, he's a player, but I am very curious to see how teams evaluate that. Right, the not undersized, but medium-sized winger who's also the elder statesman of the class. How they evaluate that versus a Viggo Bjork, who is also an undersized player, but plays the middle of the ice back home, right? And, he's only 5'9", 5'10", but is like basically a full year younger than Ivar, another Swedish prospect. Yeah. So it's like, how are they going to evaluate these two? Where's the developmental runway? Who steps up where? Who dominates what? Like, it's going to be very curious to see how the teams evaluate those two guys and how we do as well.
Yeah. Viggo Bjork, one of the most fascinating guys, because he set the record for points in a single season in the J20 level at 16, not just for a U17,
16.
the whole dang
All
thing, all time. 72 points. I think he had 34 points more than the next closest U17 player in the history of
nasty.
thing. I mean, and the guys that he was ahead was like Willie Nylander and the Sedins, and it's like, it's like,
Yeah.
come on, man. So and he was
Come
way
on.
far from them. Incredibly
Yeah.
intelligent player. His brother did get drafted the other day. His brother's
Vancouver.
going to Colorado College. Uh, Interested to see what Vigo's long-term path is going to be. At 5'9",
Mhm.
probably doesn't behoove him to play in the SHL, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there. On
But
the
is he gonna
other
play in
end of
the
the side,
J20? But wait a
well, yeah,
sec,
that
is
he
he gonna
can't.
play in the
Like he
J20
can't.
again? He can't. He's gotta play
No,
with
well,
Djurgårdens up
that's the
top.
thing where it's like, what are you gonna do? Like, how do you that he doesn't have a great option at this point. So
They could
we'll
loan him to the
see what.
Allsvenskan maybe? Is that a thing? Could they do that?
Yeah. I mean, I think you'll have to
It's
find a
unlikely
place
though.
for him. Yeah, you'll
Yeah.
have to find a
Djurgården won't
place
wanna
for him.
give
So
him
we'll
up.
see.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. I mean, hey, yeah. How about the run Djurgården's on in terms of their draft picks over the last
Hot
forever,
toddy.
basically. But
Yeah.
real quick, just to kind of go through some of these other guys to know. One guy, two guys in the OHL, massive forwards, Ryan Rubrek,
Dopeness.
who's another late 07, Ethan Belchetz, who is
Yeah.
a large 08. He's a guy that I think, I felt like he underperformed expectations last year, even though he was fairly good. But the flashes of a 6'5" guy that can move and hit and willing to
Yeah.
fight, and then he has a great release on his shot. He is physically developed ahead of his peers, so you always wonder in terms of overall
He's huge.
ceiling on players like that. But he's a big man.
Yeah.
But on the back end, it's going to be fascinating. You got Ryan Lynn, who moves pucks, and
Big
outside
big
of
fan.
yeah, outside of Landon DuPont, one of the most productive U17 seasons in the WHL in the last 30 years. And you could say the same things about Daxon Rudolph, and who we mentioned earlier. A guy I put on my way too early top 10, and it might be a little early to put him in that range, but a guy I wanted to talk about quick is Chase Reed, Sioux Greyhounds.
Mm-hmm.
He started last season in the North American League. He was never drafted into the USHL. Started in the North American League. Was drafted in the OHL. And the Sioux Greyhounds are watching him and like, hey, wait a minute. This kid's like
good.
really, really good. Like he could run our power play. Like he ends up going to the OHL, puts up 33 assists, leads all rookies in assists late, as a later addition, and played dozens of just insane minutes every night. That's a guy who just figured things out. I'm always fascinated by players like that. So I'm excited to see what he's going to be. And then one last guy to mention, USHL Clark Cup MVP, Clark Cup playoffs MVP, Muskegon Lumberjacks, Tynan Lawrence.
Yeah.
It's just real quick. Opine on Tynan real quick.
Tynan's real good too, for sure. He's loads of skill. Like you said, MVP there, had a tremendous playoff. Chase Reed is wild because he came over, right, coming out of the Null, and then only plays sub 40 games and as a first team all rookie, right? Like he just comes in ready to go.
Yeah, and
6'2",
USA
invited
him to their camp. USA invited him to their U18 camp. I wish they would have put him on the roster because I would have loved to have seen him in that tournament.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I'm like you, and Tynan Lawrence too. Like, I think he put up a point a game in the USHL in the regular season too, right? He's an interesting one because he's so slight, right? He's about 6 foot, but he's I think subs 170 out of New Brunswick. But he's a really interesting player, and I think a lot of teams are very interested. It's like, what's he going to do between now and BU in 27, right? So he's got, I think he's not committed there until 27, 28, but we imagine he's going to go there in 26, 27. So what's he going to do next year is the big question. Everybody wants to know, is he coming over? Is he coming over to the CHL? What do we think? I got no inside information. I'll have to start hammering the phone.
I don't know. I mean, I think at this point it's up in the air. He is even younger than Keaton Verhoff. He's an August 08 birthday. So August 3rd.
Birthday with my son.
So Tynan Lawrence, and I also think he did bulk up some. I'd like to see a new measurement on him. I think he's a little bit heavier than he was at the beginning of the season, but at the same time, Really fascinating player. Also had 6 points at the under 17 challenge and was a standout at the Youth Olympics as a U16 player as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, 18 points in 14 games, including 8 goals in the run to the Clark Cup that the Muskegon Lumberjacks won. All right. One more time before we go on our
Here
summer
we go.
break here. We're going to go into our segments, and let's go over under real quick. This we got to get through it here. I'm going to start us off, and we're going to do 2 about the last draft and 2 about the next draft, okay? So,
Yep.
last draft, here's for me. Matthew Schaefer will be a New York Islander for the entirety of the 2024-25 season. Or 25-26 season, sorry. Let's get our years right. 25-26.
Here we go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say beyond belief. I'm gonna say beyond belief.
Ooh, I
I'm
like
gonna
it.
say
Okay.
that I'm gonna say that Matthew Darsh is gonna come in there with like eye on the prize. It's not about selling tickets next year, even though you love the person, you love the player. I think that he could come in, Shafe could come into camp and really make a true effort and make that team. What's best for him is to play more games, to play against competition. Maybe that's not quite at the NHL level yet. Can't go to the A. Could send him back to Erie. I say send him down the road. Send him down to school. Have him play somewhere. Maybe Penn State, maybe Michigan, whatever. I'm saying send him to school.
Interesting. Yeah. And I mean, it's I think you'd have to make that decision like now.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna say
yesterday.
it is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it's believable, and I also think it's gonna happen because of. Yeah, I personally, for his development, whether it's school, whether it's going back to the OHL, he needs more time, and I think rushing him. You look at teams can only make mistakes when they rush a player. They rarely make mistakes ever when they say go back. Even if it's the OHL. He played really well, but we're talking about a 17 game sample. Love the player, love the attitude, love the maturity of the kid. Do right by his development. And I think the Islanders are going to be pretty bad next year. So do right by his development.
Let him play somewhere else. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. The Pittsburgh Penguins will look back on this class that they just drafted as a key part of their rebuild. Okay? The players they picked will be key contributors.
I'm going to say it's beyond belief. And the reason I say it's beyond belief is I think that next year is going to be the year that the Pittsburgh Penguins say, this is the one that changed the tide because we got a top 5 pick. Basically it's really difficult. No, this is not just a criticism of their first round. It's more when you are picking 11th overall, it is really difficult to have that central building block. Do I think that this will be a contributor? Yes. Do I think it is going to be a central piece of their rebuild? I just don't see it. I do not see it with the players that they picked. I do not see it with where they had to pick. I think that they will have depth. They will have a better prospect system because of it. I do not think that this has significantly moved the ball forward for them.
Yep, I'm with you. I agree completely. And I also doubt that they will be able to fall far enough to get that real impactful player when they have Sid and Gino on the team. Sid will not allow them to lose that many games. There will be teams that actively get rid of their good players so that they lose games. Sidney Crosby will not allow. He will not allow it to happen.
I think you're right.
Picking
that's the hard
7th next year. Okay, well, you're still not getting that superstar, right? Like it's much harder to find him at 7 than it is at 1-2. They're in a tough spot.
I think you're right. Oh, man, this is tough. This is tough. It's not great. All right. It's not great. Not great, Bob. Not great. Right, so let's go to the 2026 class. And after a year where we were less enamored with the defensemen, there's a lot of really good defensemen in this next class. So my question to you, Mr. Cam Robinson, is, or my statement is, there will be 4 defensemen selected in the top 10 of the 2026 NHL Draft. There were 2 this year, but 4 next year. Will it happen?
2 this year, 4. Gosh, okay. So we're looking Verhoff. We're thinking one of those Carson Carrolls, Ryan Lynn. the kid of the Q, what's his name? William Villanueva.
William
I'm gonna say
Villeneuve. I
sure.
don't think he's going to be a top
Villeneuve,
10, but yeah,
Villanueva, whatever. Yeah, Daxon
yeah.
Rudolph. Like, there's some guys. I mean, hey, you watch out for him. He's a real interesting player. But you're right. He's probably gonna fall because of the size profile in this defense. Sure, why not? Let's say 4. Let's say 4 out of the top 10. I could see it. I could see it sneaking in there. 3, I would have felt confident, but 4, I think is possible. I'm gonna say that's
I,
believable.
I can see it. I can see it too because I haven't seen enough centers raise their hand
Yeah,
for next season yet.
yeah,
That's the other thing.
yeah.
That's the other reason is that this year was such a center heavy draft. If we're talking about 2 of the top, our top 2 wingers going or top 2 forwards going into the season are both wings, I could definitely see guys like I'm telling you, Ryan Lynn is a modern day puck mover. He's a guy that I think could be in there. Daxon Rudolph, Carson Carrolls that they could potentially sneak in there. Maybe there are probably some guys that we're not even thinking about right now in that mix. But Keaton Verhoff could go as high as number 2.
Obviously.
So I think it's believable as well. All right, I'll give you the last one here.
And it's an easy one. Gavin McKenna will be the
Is
2026 Hobie Baker Award winner. It's yes or no?
I think it's believable if he goes to Michigan State. I think it's beyond belief if he goes to Penn State. Not because I don't think that he can really tear it up, but I think that what we've seen is when you are a winger and he does drive play and he will dominate things, I think you need to be with natural finishers. You need to be with guys that can put pucks in the net. So it does come down to which school he ends up choosing. But I'll tell you what, I think it's beyond belief for this reason. I think we're going to see the James Hagen's Revenge Tour in 2025-26. And he's my early prediction for that. And let's think about this. Isaac Howard is returning to school. We have never seen a Hobie Baker winner come back.
Never.
As a forward. So like the field for this award will have never been more loaded. So it's pretty darn good. So I'm going to say it's beyond belief, but I am prepared to eat those words, and I reserve judgment to change my mind come October when I have a better sense of my wits.
Okay, let me just ask you this. As of right now, Gavin McKenna, James Hagens, you put them both in good programs, right? BC, Penn State, or Michigan State, whatever you mix and match them. I don't care which ones they're even playing in. Who do you think? Do you think Jimmy's that year of experience in the NCAA is going to be enough? Because we've seen them go head to head before. We were in Finland at the U18s. Hagen started out as the front runner, and boy, oh boy, Gav took it from him, and he's a year younger. I don't know. I think it's very difficult for a 17-year-old who's going to turn 18 halfway through the year to win that. But I mean, we saw what Mac did. I mean, I think he could do it. I think he could do it. But it's like also if he's playing at MSU, he's going to be it's just going to be juiced everywhere around him. Like, is it going to be difficult for voters to be like, do we give it to McKenna? Do we give it to Ike? Do we give it to Lindstrom? Do we give it to there's just so many players. Trey Augustine. There's going to be so many options on that team that might pull away from him too.
Yeah, we've seen that happen before where you had multiple options on the same team, and I think like Zeev Buyam's candidacy was probably hurt by Jack Devine leading the nation in scoring last year.
Without
all those different things that could come into play. So yeah, I think you bring up great points. All right, so we're going to close this out with you have to pick one, and we're going to go with we all assume that Gavin McKenna is going to be the number 1 guy. But number 2 is going to be a very interesting debate, and it's obviously too early. But as we have this debate, as we think about things coming up, like, Ivar Stenberg is going to be at the World Junior Summer Showcase. Keaton Verhoff is going to be over at the Gretzky Cup. We're not going to get to see very much head-to-head action between those 2 players. But you have to pick one at this stage right now, Cam. The draft is tomorrow, and you've got to pick number 2 right now. Are you picking Keaton Verhoff? Or are you picking Stenberg?
I'm taking Keaton Verhoff.
Not even thinking about it.
Ultra. Not even thinking about it. I'm just going. I just banged it out. I'm taking the kid who the 6'4" right shot defenseman who scored 20 goals this year in 60 games for Victoria as a 16-year-old. who's going to go play at State there at Penn State. I think, sorry, at Nodak. I think he's gonna separate himself as maybe not the highest pure upside guy, but as like the best pick at number 2.
The ceiling on him is the difference for me. The ceiling on him, because I think Stenberg is outstanding. I think he's going to play in the SHL next year. He's going to be a top 6 forward. He's probably going to put some of these numbers that we've seen
Right.
laying them to waste. He is a late birth date, which does change the dynamic, but we're talking about a kid that's almost an entire year younger than him, in Keaton Verhoff. So yes, I agree. If you give me the pick between the two right now, I think it's always going to be, if you give me the big defenseman versus the wing, and I think it's close, I'm going to take the defenseman in that situation. I think that's how you have to do it. It wasn't necessarily a hard question at this point, but what's going to be interesting is, what's the field going to look like next year? That's what we really can't predict. That's what we can't know right now. We'll see things at the World Junior Summer Showcase. We'll see things at the Hlinka Gretzky Cup. By the way, Vigo Bjork also going to the World Junior Summer Showcase and not to the Hlinka Gretzky Cup. So that's
another reason why I'm not going.
Exactly. You can't see Vigo. Can't see our guy Vigo. Also, it's going to be
World
weird
Junior Summer Showcase.
Come
on, take a break, man.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm glad he's going because I'll be there. So yeah. But Cam, it's been a lot of fun this year, man. We've had a blast doing this podcast. We have had a blast hearing from all of you guys that are enjoying it. We hope that you continue to enjoy it. We hope that you continue to listen and continue to hang out with us. We will take a few weeks off. We'll let you know. Keep an eye on social media for when we're going to return. Definitely out for the rest of July here, just so we can recoup and reorganize and get ourselves ready. But the 2026 draft will not sleep, because the season starts at the end of July, and then it goes all the way until we get to the picks landing in June. So a lot is coming along. Cam, how are you going to spend these next few weeks? What are you going to do? What are you going to enjoy about not thinking about hockey for just like 1 minute?
Whew. I'd like to break one more something, signing, McKenna, trade, something. That'd be nice just to send me on my way. But I could go away on that Bouchard one. I could go away on that on a nice high note on that. That's pretty good. That felt good. Maybe there might have been an audible woo and a fist bump on that one. I'm going to a remote island that has little cell service and white sandy beaches. And I'm going this weekend. I'm taking off. You guys aren't even going to hear from me. I'm going to fade away into the background. I'm going to bring the kid's skimboard, probably hurt myself on it, read a book, get sunburnt. It's going to be lovely. This pale skin is not made for the sun, but it will be getting some sun. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to really, really soak it up. How about you?
I am going to take a cut. Well, I don't have a ton of time off, but I will take a little bit. We got a lot of stuff, a lot of irons in the fire here at FloHockey as we get ready for the 25-26 season. But I will head up to northern Minnesota and take some time away with family, with my wife's family for a bit, kind of hopefully be completely disconnected for an entire week, which is really good for me. And I everybody out there, make sure that you are relaxing, read a book, get some sun, get in the water, do things, enjoy. October will be here soon enough. You don't have to start the when is it October yet tweets in July. We can get those later. We're going to have plenty of time. But man, it's been an absolute blast. 30 episodes in, having a ton of fun here on Called Up the Prospects podcast. Huge thanks to everybody at FloHockey that made this possible. Thanks to Carson for producing the last few weeks, including today. And also thanks to all you guys for listening. We really do appreciate it. Remember, the best way to support the podcast, leave kind ratings and reviews on your podcast app of choice. It really does help. 5-star ratings really go a long way to moving us up the charts. We're top 20 podcasts in hockey when we've been dropping these posts, which is really exciting for us to see in terms of your guys' commitment to helping us grow. It's been a lot of fun. Make sure to leave plenty of comments on the YouTube page. Hopefully some of the ones nicer than the last podcast, but we do appreciate everybody. Yeah, exactly. We send us. We'll
take the engagement.
Nice, but we hopefully you guys enjoy this. A little bit of an extra long podcast today, but we had a lot of fun doing it this year. We'll be back soon. Called Up the Prospects podcast is a lot of fun to do. Huge thanks to both Flo and Elite Prospects for letting me and Cam do this together, because it has been quite fun. So that's going to do it for the final edition of the 2025 season, 24-25 season. And we are going to be back to start the 2025-26 season right here on Called Up the Prospects podcast. For Cam Robinson, I'm Chris Peters. We'll see you next time.